You don't have to ask Ben Johnson where's the beef because he's getting it. In Chicago, the Bears are loading up on the interior. But is it enough? We'll discuss that and more today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I love it when I hear her say it's your team every day because that is the fact. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen and reminding you that wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch them or listen to them, make sure you tap in so you do not miss an episode. You know, we bring a double dose here of Locked On NFL each and every day. This is the barbershop. And my guest today, well, not really a guest, he's a regular guest, a recurring feature here on Locked On NFL is my brother Chris Carter from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, as well as Locked On Steelers. Here's what we're going to go over. Segment 3, the wide receiver market is wide open before free agency, and I made the mistake of comparing somebody to Hines Ward, and Chris almost jumped through that screen on me. And we're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about all these receivers that are being moved around prior to free agency. Crosby maxes out in Vegas. I know y'all can look at that a whole bunch of different ways, but I'm talking about money here. He got maxed out in his bank account, and it's a little bit refreshing because he's actually staying at home. And at the top of the show, what we're going to do is discuss Ben Johnson adding beef to the Bears and what kind of ramifications does it have for the Chiefs. And everybody was sitting there saying, well, they only got 3 offensive linemen. Well, maybe they only have 2 now. Let's get into it right now with Chris Carter. Chris, a lot of uncharacteristic movement. I wouldn't necessarily say uncharacteristic, but I'm only saying that is because this is not the most robust free agency class that there's been in a while. And this draft is considered, okay, I always like all the drafts, but, you know, other people are saying it doesn't have a whole bunch of top-end people. It looks like more teams are going to come into next year being the same version of themselves that they were in the past year, but the Bears have a new coach with a new approach, and they are destined to fix the offensive line, and they've already gotten off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, look, they need to fix that line. If Ben Johnson wants to protect Caleb Williams, that's going to be a priority. I think a lot of teams are realizing they need to have they need to have the lines to protect their guys, or to be either protect your star quarterback or to bulldoze for your run games so that you can, help your less than star quarterback. So, if Caleb Williams is supposed to be the franchise guy, they need to protect him. And guess what? The Chicago Bears allowed the league's leading 68 most sacks in the NFL last year. They also allowed 248 pressures. That was 8th most in the league last year. So they got to improve the offensive line, getting a veteran who helps in the middle that can help and be a big part of that.
No doubt about it. Let's get with Lauren Cox. Lauren Cox is going to tell you who the first edition of the Bears' new interior was, and then we'll get to the Chiefs and we'll talk about what in the world they got going on. Check this out.
The Chicago Bears trade for Jonah Jackson shows just how desperate they were for offensive line help and the necessary evil they have to go through to upgrade the group in front of Caleb Williams. I'm Lauren Cox, host of the Locked On Bears podcast. And the Chicago Bears need a bunch of upgrades on the offensive line. They need to replace all 3 interior starters. And so you're not going to get Pro Bowl players at every spot, but maybe a former Pro Bowl player in Jonah Jackson. Clearly a player who disappointed as a free agent signing for the Los Angeles Rams and is definitely overpaid on his current contract. That's why the Bears were able to get a starter for just a 6th-round pick, but they're going to have to pay him as one of the higher-paid guards in football and not necessarily expecting that level of play from him. But perhaps the familiarity with Ben Johnson can help him get back closer to the quality of play he had in Detroit, while the Bears have to continue to look elsewhere to fill out the rest of their offensive line. We'll break down this deal and what's next for the Bears O-line on the Locked On Bears podcast.
Brother, familiarity is something that is really, really, it could be a good thing, but it seems like they're doing familiarity and alignment with the coaching staff. They did it here in Jacksonville where everybody has to line up. I think Ben Johnson going back and getting a lineman who did not play well as a free agent, he knows what he's getting, and I think that's very important. Just an example. He didn't work out, but James Dotson did. And James Dotson, and you're very familiar with him, he wasn't very good where he was before, but all of a sudden he goes to the Rams and he's very, very good. And now you may have a situation where it didn't work out there, but Ben Johnson says he's good enough for me, and I'll take him in Chicago.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I covered Kevin Dotson. He was
Kevin
I always
Dotson.
he was a guy that was he had some very good games for the Steelers, but then he had some very bad games for the Steelers. And eventually they were like, well, you know what? We're gonna invest at other positions. They brought in James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, and they didn't need him anymore, so they shipped him out. But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just about finding the right fit. You know, the Steelers have done that with several other positions over the years, where a guy that didn't work somewhere else was great for them. But you know, this is what the Bears got to do. They have salary cap space, they have an opportunity, and they have a young quarterback. Now they need to beef up around this quarterback, not just in the offensive line, but everywhere. They need to add talent all over the place. If Ben Johnson wants to hit the ground running, which he needs to, they're going to need to invest, and they're going to need to spend, and they're going to need to make space for that type of thing. So getting offensive line help, that's a good start, but they need to keep it following up with it more, because the Chicago Bears, they've been at the bottom of the barrel for a very long time. I think that with this contract, I think they still have about $50.3 million in cap space, so they can still go and get some guys. But the question is, what do you prioritize now that you've helped your offensive line?
Now, check this out. I'm glad you said that they need to continue, because the Kansas City Chiefs said, okay, hold my beer. I got something for you. Check this out.
The Kansas City Chiefs have made a trade. Joe Thuney is headed to the Chicago Bears for a 2026 fourth-round pick. This is all about creating cap space in 2025. Once the Chiefs franchise tagged Trey Smith, they were about $19 million over the salary cap in 2025. They have to be under it by the start of the new league year next Wednesday, which is a week from today. They are currently about $3 million over after this move, so they still have a couple of moves to make. I would imagine that Chris Jones is going to get a restructure, and that will get them under, and then they can play around with the money that they need with Patrick Mahomes, and that will take care of them for the 2025 cap space. But Joe Thuney is no longer a Kansas City Chief. It's really surprising, considering he was the MVP for 2024 for this team. But the team decided they needed to move on. They franchise tagged Trey Smith, and now Joe Thuney will be a Chicago Bear. Much more to come on Locked On Chiefs.
And just like that, the Bears now have two new interior players. Joe Thuney, a little long in the tooth at 32 years old, but guards seem to have that shelf life where they can play a little bit longer because they're in tight, confined spaces. He has not had massive injury problems. Very, very good player, great reputation. Ben Johnson's going all in on his offensive line right away.
And again, I think that's the right move. You got to protect Caleb Williams. You got to build up this offense, and so get stronger up front so that Caleb Williams can be more sturdy in the pocket. Something I thought I didn't study Caleb Williams a whole lot, but a lot of the games that I did tune in for, I felt like he was running for his life a little bit. Sometimes when it was warranted, sometimes when it wasn't warranted. But sometimes when quarterbacks do that, when it's not warranted, it's because they can't trust what they see in front of them, because their line's giving up pressure from all over the place. So you need an O-line that's going to give him the confidence to be able to stick in the pocket, make the reads, and then make the ridiculous throws that he made all throughout his college career that made him the first overall pick. So it makes sense to me that Ben Johnson's doing this. Also, you look at what the offense that he just came from had. They had a kick-butt offensive line in Detroit. He knows that is still a key to winning football games and being a great football team. So, yeah, it makes sense that they're investing here early.
It does make a lot of sense when you look around at the teams. I think the Chiefs kind of spoiled people because they've made the Super Bowl now 2 times in like the last 5 or 6 years, where their offensive line left a lot to be desired. Teams that are bad teams, the first thing that they always go in, it's like if you take over a city as the mayor, you want to work on infrastructure. You got to fix the roads and fix the bridges. And this is exactly what Ben Johnson is doing. And I think he wants to get that blue collar result playing in Chicago. They never had a 4,000-yard passer. I know he wants to change that, but make no mistake about it. They call the monsters of the Midway for a reason. You have to be able to control the line of scrimmage in every city, but mainly in Chicago. You really, really do have to be able to identify with the quote unquote identity that the Bears have had forever, and that is to control the line of scrimmage. We're going to talk about a great player who's doing something that other people are not doing, and that is building a legacy and staying where he always has been. And this is not a knock on anybody that wants to go to a contender, but we're going to give Max Crosby his flowers for a decision that he made. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored, brought to you by Chewy. Man, I know y'all pets mean a whole bunch to you because mine did. My Lexi was my everything. And you probably heard of Chewy. They have everything you need to make your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. It's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Auto Ship is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, and essentials so you never run out. You can easily change or cancel at any time. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. All right, we're running it down here on Locked On NFL on this beautiful, beautiful day. Free agency starts next week, and I'm noticing a trend. Teams are making sure that they take guys off the market, and they're making sure if they don't want dudes, they're going to let them go and do what they want to do also. And we'll talk about the wide receiver position in particular in free agency in segment 3. But right now, Max Crosby, a very good player. Pass rushers are hard to come by, of course, unless you're in Pittsburgh, because it seems like they've had one since I was a kid. They've always, and Dallas seems like they continue to get pass rushers. But when you get someone like Max Crosby, who just looks and feels like he was born to be a Raider, and that's exactly what he's going to be. He got an extension for over $100 million for 3 years. It's a different trend. They haven't won a lot since he's been there. But guess what? He's staying. Not a knock on Myles Garrett for wanting to be with a contender. Not a knock for any of the receivers that say they want to play for a contender. But this is a little bit refreshing to see a guy stay and maybe want to retire where he's always been identified with.
Yeah, I think it's a cool thing that, it's part of what makes football, right? Is that, you have your greats in every organization. You're able to spread those out and guys stick around, and it becomes fan favorites, and fans can latch on to guys for guys in their careers. Like TJ Watt, he says he never wants to play for any other coach that's not named Mike Tomlin. So he's there's a lot of things like that. But I think it's a good move by the Raiders to keep Crosby. I know there's some people out there saying they could trade him off and pick up assets and things like that, but sometimes you need to still keep a star around, and this guy's in his prime. It'd be different if he was a few years older, I think, but like, he's 28, he'll be 28 this season. So like, you're getting him in his prime, and if you're trying to rebuild with your new coach, and you're trying to move forward, you need to have at least have a pillar on your team, and he is the pillar for the Raiders right now. And also, before this extension, I haven't seen the updated numbers, but before this extension, they had $95.3 million in cap space this year. They got plenty of money to spend. Next year, they have $181 million in cap space. Whatever the money is that he got extended with, they're still going to have plenty to spend on a lot of the things that they need to do. So I think it was a smart move by the Raiders. I know a lot of people just want to burn everything down all the time if you're not good, but I think sometimes you gotta pay the guys that you've drafted and developed into being superstars.
No doubt about it. Listen to your boy Q, who happens to be our boy Q from the Raiders.
What's happening? It's your boy Q Myers from the Locked On Raiders podcast with breaking Raiders news. The team has come to an agreement on a 3-year contract extension with Mad Max Crosby, $106.5 million, $91.5 million fully guaranteed. The 3 years is on top of the 2 years that he had left on his current deal. So Mad Max is tied in with the silver and black for the next 5 years. There was a lot of conversation so far this offseason. Immediately after the season actually got wrapped up, what were the Raiders going to do with Max Crosby's contract, knowing he had 2 years left on a deal, but no guaranteed money? They addressed that. They kept him in the mix. He's the leader of the team. John Spytek, Pete Carroll talked about in the press conference, it's not about what you've done, it's about what you're going to do. High expectations for Mad Max Crosby. They also, on a lesser note, signed Alex Kappa, who got released by the Bengals, to a 2-year deal as well to address the Raiders' offensive line. For all things silver and black, make sure to tune in to the Locked On Raiders podcast with me, your boy Q Myers.
a little note mentioning Alex Kappa, Tom Brady, Spytech, Tampa. There you go again with familiarity, and those relationships do matter. But to get on the Crosby situation, it's refreshing. It's really, really refreshing to see a kid. And then the other thing about it's refreshing to see somebody to not say, I want to play for a contender. Like I said, no knock on Myles Garrett or anybody else that has gone through this. But the bottom line is sometimes these teams make mistakes. And you saw it with Saquon Barkley last year. And you even hear sometimes in draft prognostication things that I don't understand. And you made a point. You say people want to burn things down. Chris, what is the threshold, in your opinion, like if you're really, really bad and you got a really good 26-year-old and they go, well, you might as well get something for him. I mean, he's in his prime. What I don't understand, you can't get talent in the order that you need it. So when you have it, I don't understand getting rid of it like the Giants with Saquon and now, this thought that, well, you got to burn everything down when a guy's 26, 27-year-old. Why? I don't understand that.
I think it's because people always try to like do the other thing that like in the moment, right? Like when you're saying just trade him away, you're not good right now, so you're hoping that you can just get lucky in the draft. But man, like trading away great talent for what do they say? A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you have a superstar that wants to play for you, that's not going nowhere, that's going to keep pushing you. It's good to have those guys. And also you need leaders. Like that's another really big part of this equation is that Max Crosby's a leader. He's the face of the Raiders. So then let's say like over these next year or two, they start to make the right investments. They start to get some draft picks. They sign some other really good free agents. Crosby's now a pillar for you. He's a guy that everyone can center around and everyone can get behind. But when you don't have that leader on your roster, it's so much harder to build. Also, when you trade away your best players, that's when you start to become a culture of an organization where those really good players, when you do get them, they're like, you know what? I kind of want to just get out of here a little bit faster because that's normally what they do. They don't pay guys. They don't keep guys. And so if you're the Raiders, you're smart. You're showing everyone, hey, if you work your butt off like Max Crosby and become a guy, you will get paid. Not only you get paid, you'll get paid twice. You'll get an extension. You'll be treated well. Everything will be hunky-dory. And so and it also allows the team to center around him. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I think most teams do this. I think that they should, but there's so much in the fan aspect of things that are just like, oh, I'm gonna be so much smarter and just trade and get this and get these draft picks, and then we'll go get these guys. And you don't know if you're gonna go get those guys. You don't know how the draft's gonna play out. So and I hear that, and I hear trying to find compensation. And if you're not a good team, like the Raiders aren't a good team, I get wanting to blow things up, but a lot of most teams that blow things up, Tony, they don't come back from it. And so not that the Raiders are coming back from them, but when you get away a superstar talent, there's no guarantee you're going to get that superstar talent back in your building that quickly.
Oh, yeah, it drives me crazy, man. I hear teams say, he's a good quarterback in the draft, but you can't draft a quarterback until you build an offensive line. Okay, so you build your offensive line, and 3 years later, the dude that's in the draft ain't as good as that guy. And oh, by the way, the dude you didn't pick, he's in your division beating your brains out every single week. It just doesn't make any sense to me why people think you have to go in a certain order. I used to go to the gym all the time, and I said, man, I want to lose my midsection. And the dude say, well, just get on a treadmill, just do a complete body. I said, no, I want to focus on my stomach. He said, doesn't work like that. Weight does not come off where you want it to come off at in spots. You didn't gain it like that, it ain't leaving that way. And I think football teams that try to build a certain way need to think of that the same way. Zach Bond got paid. He won't be on the market. I guess my man Vic Fangio said, we ain't letting him go. And this goes back. I think he got a 3-year extension for $51 million for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a lot of money for an off-ball linebacker, right? But this dude was worth it. He was one of the best defensive players in the league. But it goes back to your point. He was an afterthought in New Orleans, right? It's like, all right, whatever. And then he goes to Philadelphia. He's a champion. And not only is he a champion, he's the dude that led them all season defensively. That's a good move for Philadelphia and good for Zach Bond.
Yeah, I think so. I think you get a guy like that. Look, the Eagles, they're a Super Bowl champion team. You want to hang on to the pieces that made you that. And that's what I think it's going to be. So, I think that's I think that's what you want to do when you're a good team. When you're a bad team, you want to keep the players that move you forward. But there's things about being smart and what to invest in. And some people wonder, do you keep Zach Bond because he's a linebacker? And you know what? That's not what made you great this year. You were a great offensive line, but you also look at that team. And you see how many plays did Zach Bond make for you this year. So you're like, you know what? Let's keep that guy around. Let's find a way to make that happen. So yeah, I think it's smart to pay the players on your team to stick around.
Yeah, and you look at Nakobe Dean next to him, rookie deal. You look at Jordan, all of these linemen, all of those big guys, Jalen Carter, all of them on rookie deals. You look at Quinion Mitchell, rookie deal. You look over there at Cooper DeJean, rookie deal. Rodgers, the dude that's probably going to take Darius Slay's place because they released him. He's on a free agent deal. He hasn't been around long. He's been in the league since 2023. So guess what that means? You better pay the veterans. If you got all these dudes that are performing on rookie deals, you need to pay the veterans. Talk about veterans. A lot of veteran wide receivers are either getting permission to be traded or they're getting released. We'll discuss them. Talk about Debo Samuel and why Chris almost choked me through this computer by comparing them to Hines Ward. We'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, rolling along, man. It is almost free agency, and it's like the Wild Wild West out here already. Debo Samuel already moved. Brandon Ayuk apparently is on the market for the 49ers. I don't know who Brock Purdy going to throw. We talk about quarterbacks not having nothing around him. I don't know who he's going to throw the ball to if he does get an extension. But DK Metcalf now given permission to seek a trade. Tyler Lockett no longer a part of the plans for the Steelers. Devonte Adams going to get released. Everybody thinks he's just going to follow Aaron Rodgers, but I don't know if Aaron Rodgers has a place for him to follow him. Christian Kirk is released for the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of moving and shaking when it comes to wide receivers. Let's listen to Ross Jackson. I know y'all going to say, well, why are you talking to Ross? They ain't got no money. You know what? I'm going to give the Saints some love. They are clearing cap space at a rate that will blow your mind, and Ross is letting me know about it every step of the way. Listen to Ross Jackson talk about Devonte Adams.
Devonte Adams could be the New Orleans Saints' next shocking NFL offseason signing. They do this, it feels like, every year, make some kind of big signing that no one thinks that they're going to be able to make because they start every offseason with, an overage in terms of cap value and all these other things, but then they always find some way to bring in some big name. And what we heard from Mickey Loomis, who looked us in the face and said that they were going to be more active this offseason than they were last offseason, I don't feel like a Devonte Adams addition is one that we should rule out. I do think that it takes a little bit of a recalibration of thought, though. A lot of us, myself included, believe that the Saints would be better off effectively taking their medicine this year and then looking towards their future. That's easy to say when you don't have to look players in the face, though, and say, hey, we're not competing this year, right? The New Orleans Saints, however, have shown so far that they intend to compete.
I don't blame them, man. You got to compete because we've had this debate too many times for my comfort down here in Jacksonville when it comes to talking about tanking. I don't know how you tank in a violent sport. I don't know how you. In fact, if guys go out and don't go hard, that's a recipe to get hurt. I don't know how you tank where there's a car accident happening every 30 seconds and dudes are playing for their livelihood. So I understand that the Saints may go out. There are people right here in Jacksonville telling me that somebody said this. I got to give you this one now because I forgot to mention this. Somebody said, no, Devontae's too old, but I'll take Cooper Kupp. And I had to let them know that come training camp, they'll be the same age. And Cooper Kupp has injuries. So the logic behind some of these things drives me crazy. But have you ever seen a situation where the receiver market pre-free agency is so robust?
I think I'm not sure of how robust it is. I think it's full of a lot of older guys, right? Like guys that people are trying to get rid of and dump on salary. Now, DK Metcalf is a unique situation. That guy being available, that's gonna he now takes the spot that T. Higgins had when people thought that the Bengals weren't going to franchise tag him. But now that he's available to trade, people are going to be gunning after him to figure things out. I think he'd be even above Devonte Adams. But between him, Diggs, Keenan Allen, I'm a little worried about Chris Godwin's injury from last year. But Amari Cooper, there's a lot of guys like that in this free agency class that you can go out and you can go and find a guy in. But for me, Wig, like I'm looking at these wide receivers. Christian Kirk, another one. I think he's one that the Steelers are going to look hard at. I think that there's this sense of, if you're getting a wide receiver from this free agency class, you're getting an add-on piece, a complementary piece.
Yes.
You're not getting the star that's going to lead you to the next level. You're like, if you get Devonte Adams is coming in to be a placeholder, or to pass the baton, or to help raise and help mature a younger receiver. So I think those are some of the things that can be had with this class, is that vets come in and help young guys. But certainly there's a lot of options there, and that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see what teams do this, and also what else happens in the next few days here, because we did these shows back in January and people wanted to talk about free agency, and I'm like, guys, we don't even know what the free agency pool is going to look like yet, because we got to see who doesn't stick with their team.
Right. And that's what's going on, man. I tell you, I start thinking about what you said, and teams that can really, really benefit from the type of receiver and the type of role that they'll play. Now, some of these guys have to accept that even though you may be a Hall of Famer, you ain't going to be a Hall of Famer with us these last 2 years. Some people have to resign themselves to understanding that and getting it. There's two teams. One is Pittsburgh, even though y'all got to resolve the quarterback situation, and I'll get to that in just a second, because I want to ask which one of these guys fits better for you, because I thought it was Debo Samuel, but it turns out it's not. I think the Chargers have a quarterback that people all believe in, right? They have a coach that people believe in. They have a rookie wideout that overperformed as a second-round pick, and now he's going to be their wide receiver one. That's a perfect situation for a team that won 11 games last year, for Devonte Adams to go, you know what, I'm going to plant my flag right here for the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm going to run routes for Justin Herbert opposite, McConkey, and we're going to go get it. And then if a team like the Chargers is able to do that, they can still address it on day 2 of the draft, but use that early pick in the first round or in the second round on other things that they need, like maybe a running back in the second round, right, to make that thing better, or another edge rusher, since they let go of Joey Bosa yesterday. That's the kind of team, as long as the team has a role that a player who's used to catching 100 balls a year can adjust to, I think you can make it work.
Certainly. I think that's the thing. You got to find the right guy that fits you in the right place, and that you can use the right way, right? Like if you need a wide receiver 2, then you go get a wide receiver 2. If you need a wide receiver 1 to hold down the fort until you find your future wide receiver 1, there's plenty of guys like that there. But it's all about finding the right spot for you, and it's not a one size fits all equation. What might be good for one team could be bad for another. So it's just about teams making the right decisions to find the right guys and also pairing with the right quarterbacks, because that's the other thing, right? Is what style of play does your quarterback lean on?
Who's a good fit for the Steelers? I always thought it was Debo because of the toughness, that way that he played. I said, him and Anquan Bolden and Miles and Hines Ward all kind of come from the same DNA. But there's something you mentioned, and we talked about this with Max, and that's why I'm glad we're able to tie this in. Some players are great players, right? But they really mean a whole bunch to the city and the team that they played for. So Hines Ward was that guy. And I think when you wear the Steelers uniform, that's something that you need to understand and embrace. I don't know if Pickens has done that right now George Pickens is a different cat, right? So who do you think out of all of these receivers, if one of these vets is a guy that Pittsburgh, let's just assume that they keep Justin Fields, because I do watch Locked On Steelers, and I heard you say that the other day, you and your guest, Saunders. So assuming it's Justin Fields, give me 1 or 2 of these guys as a good fit for Pittsburgh.
I'm looking at Christian Kirk, because the rumors were around the team that they were trying to trade for him before the trade deadline, before he broke his collarbone this past season. So that was an interest there. He would pose as a good number 2 wide receiver with vet experience to come in and work with George Pickens and Calvin Austin and that crew. So yeah, Christian Kirk's been my guy, and that's why I did my Thursday episode as well as that on that. If you want more insights on him, that's out there for your on all your podcasting apps for Locked On Steelers. But also Tony, I wouldn't rule them out of the DK Metcalf sweepstakes. Now maybe they'll get spent, but I see this going 2 ways. And again, I outlined this on my podcast. But if they go with Christian Kirk, they're looking to give George another chance. They're looking to build forward potentially with him if he has a good year and he shows that he could be a leader. But if they go with DK Metcalf, I'm fully expecting them to trade away George Pickens, get compensation from it, and then like draft a young wide receiver early and like try to rebuild the nucleus that way.
No doubt about it. It's something for us all to watch. Next week will be a fun week. I may be here next week. I may not. I have a little bit of a procedure. I know Ross Jackson's going to fill in for me early in the week, but it'll be nice and fun to follow up with all of you guys here on Locked On NFL. But if I'm not here, Tyler Rowland definitely going to be here early in the morning because it's a double shot of espresso. He will wake you up like you ain't never been woke up like that before. I don't care if you live in the country and you got roosters in your yard. Trust me, if 6 o'clock comes and you turn on Locked On NFL, you will wake up, right? And slide back by the barbershop, whether it's me, Ross Jackson, or whoever will be here with the same guests that we have all the time here on Locked On NFL. For Chris Carter, for Tony Wiggins, we will see you. Thank you for joining us again and making us your team every day. Your time is very, very valuable, and we appreciate you spending it with us. Take care. We'll see you next time.